Level 1. Halcon, Lookout. Every rank here teaches you the same lesson, silver or lead. By the time you're the one offering that choice to someone else, you'll have forgotten there was ever a third option. Right now, you're 18, standing on a rooftop with a radio in your hand, and you think this is just a way to make some extra money. By the time this ends, you'll understand that every choice you thought you were making freely was already made for you the day someone decided you were useful. This is your life, rank by rank, inside the organization. And this is what it costs to climb it.
Nobody sits you down and asks if you want in. That's not how it works here. Your cousin already runs with him, and one day he introduces you to a man named Beto. Friendly, patient, the kind of person who talks to you like an equal, even though you can tell he isn't. He doesn't offer you a job. He shows you what staying out looks like instead. The same 3 families on your block who never took the offer still working the same hours for the same nothing. Still worried about the same things you're worried about right now. He doesn't need to say anything else. Your job is simple. At first, sit on a rooftop or a corner store balcony, watch the road. Notice which cars don't belong, which ones move too slow, which ones circle back. A radio, a signal, nothing more. Nobody asked if I wanted in, you tell yourself the first night, watching headlights pass below. They just made sure I saw what staying out looked like. One night, you missed something. A plate you should have caught. A car that circled twice before you noticed. Nothing happens to you directly, but the shipment that moves through your corner that night almost doesn't make it. And the tension in Beto's voice the next day is the first time you understand, clearly, that the radio in your hand was never really about watching the road. It was about how much now depended on you.
Level 2. Trainee Enforcer. The safe house sits outside town, unremarkable from the road, the kind of place you drive past 100 times without noticing. This is where you're sent after 2 years of watching corners. A promotion, though nobody calls it that. Your trainer is a man everyone calls El Oso. He's calm in a way that unsettles you more than shouting would. He teaches you how to hold a weapon, how to move through a room, how to stay quiet when quiet is the only thing keeping you alive. He never raises his voice, not once. Not even when a trainee makes a mistake that would have gotten someone else screamed at anywhere else. He never raised his voice, you tell yourself one evening, watching him correct someone's grip without a hint of frustration. That's how I knew he never needed to. Trust is built here, in small, deliberate steps. Tasks that seem minor at first, then progressively carry more weight, more risk, more consequence if you hesitate or fail. You understand, without anyone explaining it directly, that every task is also a test, and every test is being recorded somewhere you'll never see. One trainee doesn't pass. There's no announcement, no explanation. He's simply not at the safe house the next week, and his name doesn't come up again. Nobody asks where he went. You've already learned better than to ask questions that don't have safe answers. Level 3. Full Enforcer. Full responsibility comes fast once you're trusted. Protecting territory, handling rival presence at the edges of ground the organization considers its own. The specifics of the work are not something you dwell on. Not out loud, not even to yourself if you can help it. What makes this level bearable is Chewy, a partner your own age, same background, same rooftop and radio beginning you had 2 years earlier. You didn't expect to become close to anyone here, but something about doing this particular work together builds a kind of friendship that doesn't need much explaining. You and Chewy don't talk about what the job requires. You talk about everything else instead. Music, family, the girl at the corner store. Anything that reminds you there's still a version of yourself that exists outside of this. We didn't talk about what we did, you reflect later. We talked about everything else, so there'd be something left of us that wasn't this. Then Chewy makes a mistake. Not a small one. The kind that costs the organization something it doesn't forgive easily. And for the first time, You're forced to decide where your loyalty actually sits, with the friend who's covered for you more times than you can count, or with the structure that both of you agreed in your own ways to serve.
Level 4, Plaza Lieutenant. You're given a plaza now, a territory of your own to run, a small city where the organization's presence needs managing rather than just protecting. The work shifts from action to administration almost overnight. You're no longer the one watching the road or holding the line. You're the one deciding who does.
Part of the job is maintaining an understanding with local authorities, a balance kept through payments, silence, and a kind of mutual convenience nobody puts into writing. The local police captain operates within this arrangement comfortably, the way a man operates within any system he's made peace with. The law here isn't absent, you explain to a younger lieutenant under you. It's just already spoken for. The arrangement holds for over a year, quiet and functional, until a new police chief arrives from outside the region. Someone who hasn't yet learned, or refuses to learn, how things are done here. He declines the understanding his predecessor accepted without hesitation. You're left managing a problem that has no clean solution, only a set of increasingly costly options, none of which resemble anything you'd have called a choice back when you were 18 and just watching a road.
Level 5, Distribution Coordinator. The regional hub is where you first see the actual scale of what you've been part of. Not a plaza, not a neighborhood, but a machine with more moving pieces than you'd ever been shown before. Your role now is coordination, keeping the supply chain moving between people and places you mostly never meet directly.
The organization runs on compartmentalization. You know your piece precisely, and almost nothing beyond it. Not out of distrust exactly, more as a kind of built-in insurance that protects everyone, including you, from knowing too much. I knew exactly one piece of a much larger machine, you tell yourself, studying a shipment manifest that tells you everything about your job and nothing about anyone else's. That was supposed to keep me safe. It just kept me useful. A rival coordinator begins encroaching on territory that technically isn't yours to defend, but functionally is your responsibility to notice. And then, without warning, in a meeting about that same territory dispute, Chewie is sitting across the table from you. No longer your partner, no longer on your side of anything. You don't know exactly when that happened, you just know it did. Level 6, Regional Commander. At this level, the decisions are life and death on a regular basis, and increasingly, they involve your own people. Hard calls about loyalty when someone's allegiance can no longer be assumed. The organization handles its internal leaks and betrayals with the same discipline it applies to everything else. And now, that responsibility sits with you. Chewie resurfaces again, not across a negotiating table this time, but in direct confrontation. The kind that leaves no room for the easy distance you'd both maintained since level 5. You think about the safe house years, the rooftop years, all the nights you talked about anything except the job, so there'd be something left of both of you that wasn't this. I once shared a room with him when we had nothing, you reflect, standing in a situation that requires you to decide what Chewie's history with you is actually worth now. Now we shared a war neither of us remembered choosing. The friendship doesn't disappear just because the structure around it is turned adversarial. It just stops being something you're allowed to act on the way you once could. Level 7, Financial Logistics Chief. The work moves indoors now, into offices that look, from the outside, like any other legitimate business. You're further from violence than you've been in over a decade, and yet you understand quickly that this distance doesn't mean safety. It means a different kind of exposure. One accounting error here could unravel more than any gunfight ever could. The organization's legitimate-facing businesses exist to make the larger operation look, on paper, like something else entirely. Running that side of things is a man named Licenciado Reyes, an accountant, precise, unassuming, someone who has never once needed to raise his voice or his hand to make a point. Reyes never touched a weapon in his life, you tell a colleague, watching him quietly rearrange a set of numbers that will protect a dozen people from scrutiny. He was still the most dangerous man in the building.
An audit begins. You're not entirely sure yet whether it's internal or from somewhere with real government authority behind it. And that uncertainty itself is the most unsettling part. Everyone connected to the financial structure, including you, spends the following weeks recalculating exactly how exposed their own position really is. Level 8, Council Member. You've reached the inner circle now, a seat at the table where the organization's real strategic decisions are made. But you learn quickly that every person at this table is simultaneously an ally and a potential threat, and the two roles are rarely distinguishable from the outside. A senior council member takes you aside early on, more warning than welcome. Trust nobody who's been here longer than you, he tells you, without much warmth in his voice. They've already survived one purge. They know how it's done. You don't fully understand the weight of that sentence until months later, watching two men who'd greeted each other warmly at your first council meeting quietly stop acknowledging one another at your fifth. Alliances form and dissolve here constantly, often invisibly, and you learn to read the room the way you once learned to read a street from a rooftop. At this level, everyone's still smiling, you observe to yourself one evening, watching the table from across the room. That's exactly why you should be careful. For the first time since level 1, you find yourself genuinely uncertain who around you can actually be trusted, including, some nights, yourself. Level 9, Capo Top Boss Circle. This is where the ground shifts completely. You've reached the top of the organization, the isolated compound, the heavy security, the kind of power that once seemed like the entire point of everything you'd survived to get here. And it's here, finally, that you understand the truth nobody tells you on the way up. There is no retirement. There's no ceiling you reach and then rest at. There's only a target that grows larger with every year you manage to survive. Every movement is calculated now. Routes changed constantly. Trust extended to almost no one. Even your own family kept carefully at a distance from the parts of your life that could put them at risk. Security isn't a precaution anymore. It's the entire shape of your remaining life. You notice something else, something you'd never fully registered at the lower levels. A young lieutenant being quietly groomed, trained, positioned in ways that mirror exactly how you were once positioned by people who were no longer around to see what became of it. It's not unusual. It's simply how every boss's replacement has always been prepared, long before anyone admits that's what's happening. I finally understood there was no ceiling to reach, you tell yourself, alone in a compound built to keep the world out. Just a target that got bigger with every year I survived. A loyalty test becomes necessary. This lieutenant, this quiet successor, has to be measured the way you were once measured by El Oso, all those years ago, in a safe house you can barely remember the layout of anymore. You watch him closely. You try to decide how much of your own history is repeating itself in front of you, and how much of it you're powerless to stop from repeating. Level 10, The Reckoning. What happens next depends on which version of this story turns out to be yours. And even now, standing at the edge of it, you're not entirely sure which one you're living. In one version, it ends in a courtroom, extradition, then a cell, the kind of high-security facility built specifically for men who once ran empires. The organization continues without you, restructured, renamed in places, but fundamentally unchanged. The same machine running on the same logic you spent 37 years learning. You spend your remaining years reading about a world you used to command, filtered through lawyers and letters and secondhand news, always one step removed from the thing that was once entirely yours to control.
In the other version, there's no courtroom, no cell, no warning at all. Just a night that ends differently than you expected. A betrayal from somewhere close, the way Chewie's first felt close, before it turned into something else. Nobody announces it. Nobody has to. The organization simply continues the next morning, the way it always has, as though the gap you left behind was already accounted for before you ever fell into it.
Your successor, the one you tested, the one you watched so carefully for signs of the same hunger you once carried, is running the plaza now, then the region, then eventually the whole structure, the way you once did. He is, at this exact moment, standing on a rooftop somewhere, handing a radio to an 18-year-old who thinks this is just a way to make some extra money. I spent 30 years climbing away from that first choice, silver or lead, you say, to no one, or to everyone who came before you and everyone who'll come after. I never noticed. I'd just been handing it to someone else the entire time.
If this showed you what it really costs to climb this ladder, comment which organization you want broken down next. Subscribe if you're new here. This channel takes you somewhere most people only ever imagine from the outside.